Today we're celebrating 186 years of the incorporation of the city of Toronto. But what a lot of people don't remember, it's actually over 12,000 years old. The word Toronto comes from Haudenosaunee word, Toronto, and it means meeting place, and it means that there were trees growing in the water, and they sheltered fish that would come there. It was like a little weir, and it was called the meeting place for the fish. And now we have meeting place for the world. The Wendat people lived here. They occupied the whole territory right up to Georgian Bay. Also, along the river and the lakes were the Anishinaabe people. They were the ones who made birch bark canoes, lived right on the mouths of the rivers, the Credit River, the Humber River, all the way along. So in those days, you would have seen great caravans almost of canoes coming along and trading with the Wendat people for their squash and their beans, and the Anishinaabe people bringing their fish and their wild rice, and there was a great trade going on. We lived in a forest of food, and we called it a food forest. It was our supermarket, and everything in nature was our Home Depot. And one of the reasons that I wanted to have a presence on the waterfront here with my boat, the Wigwam Chi-Chimong, which means simply a houseboat. We put it down here at Ontario Place last summer. It was to give a presence that there were Indigenous people all through this waterfront. In every nation, in every land, the elders to a person, whether a woman or a man, shared a common truth, one truth to understand, that the spirit of the people is equal to the power of the land. Art can pretty well be anything. It doesn't require a particular medium or a means of production. It's whatever community you live in considered to be art, that's art. Indigenous art, it's always two-dimensional. It's flat paint on flat surfaces, generally with a black outline to separate the colors from one another. We never did still life. We never did landscapes. We didn't do portraits. The art that Indigenous people made were dream images and came from the dream world, and was translated from the dream world into the physical world. There's no end of ways of expressing yourself through painting. It's a medium that has been used for hundreds of thousands of years by Indigenous peoples around the world as a way of expressing themselves. My name is Duke Redbird. I'm an elder from Saugeen First Nation up on the shores of Lake Huron in Bruce County. I live now in Toronto, and I work as artist in residence for the Toronto District School Board, the Urban Indigenous Education Centre. The name of the boat, I call it Wigwam Chi-Chimong. Wigwam is dwelling, Chi means big, and Chimong means canoe in Ojibwe. So Wigwam Chi-Chimong is a dwelling on a big canoe. The idea that I had to do with the waterfront. Since 1805, from the Don River to the Humber River, there's been no evidence that Indigenous people ever lived on the waterfront of Toronto. Citizens of Toronto, the city fathers, purchased the land on the waterfront. And once they did that, all the Indigenous people were moved off to other reserve, and the history of the waterfront from an Indigenous lens was pretty well forgotten, and there was no evidence that we ever were here. So I decided to put murals on the side of the boat that would give evidence that there was an Indigenous presence on the waterfront of Toronto. I took the idea to Museum, which is an incredible organization whose inspiration was to create Toronto, the city itself, as a museum for people to explore. It gave me an opportunity to do something that is good for the city, it's good for the indigenous people, and it's good for everybody that wants to learn a little more about the indigenous culture and the extensive history that we have in this country.